So, David, I just wanted to cover this because it's interesting. There is a big push, and it's certainly been in the news as of late for a more, I guess, a reinvigorated anti-monopoly posture for the Democratic Party. It is growing on the left. We saw some of this. There was some anticipation of this being the fight if Hillary Clinton was elected president that we would see coming out of different factions in the Senate. Very recently, a couple of weeks ago, the Open Markets Program, an anti-monopoly program that has been at the New America Foundation for about a decade, was basically jettisoned, at least in part, as a direct result of the dissatisfaction of one of New America's most prominent and biggest donors, who also happened to be the chief executive, or one of them, of Google, a company that is considered to be very monopolist in its business practices. And you made the point, and we should also say it was in the marginally better plan suggested by the Democrats. I can't remember exactly what the name was. I think it was a better deal. A marginally better deal is what I call it. But one element was a strong anti-monopoly plank. You wrote a piece saying that in many respects, the culture around us is expressing a dissatisfaction with monopolies that it seems to be out ahead of where the politicians are.
Yeah, and tech monopolies in particular, these giant platforms. I'm talking about Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple to an extent. These companies have now sort of cemented themselves within the culture, and I often think that when you start to see these things bubble up in popular entertainment, whether it's films or books or television, that's when you know that there's a critical mass that has been reached. And, I was hearing about this book by James Patterson, who's a best-selling author. He writes like 8 books a year. He's a very prolific bestseller of not, political books at all. He is a novelist. Some would say a kind of a novelist who, it's a very disposable kind of writing. These novels get churned out that people just love. They're voracious for them. And he wrote this book called The Store. And The Store is about a website called thestore.com that caters to the every need of Americans and very troublingly uses data to almost surveil on Americans and determine what they want and then, give that back to them in ways that make them dominant among society. Now, does this sound familiar to you in any way? It was obviously Amazon that Patterson was writing about. And Patterson actually has a history of saying that Amazon has been bad for the book industry because of the way in which it squeezes publishers in terms of pricing. Makes it difficult for new authors to get a foothold because if these prices are so squeezed, publishers will only go with the sure thing. It's very interesting that James Patterson would put this villain in one of his books and make it so obviously resembling Amazon and expect it to be relatable to people because, these tech companies generally have a pretty good reputation.
And, one of the things that I think is coming across is this notion, you and I, for the most part, have grown up with a bastardized version of antitrust or anti-monopoly, enforcement in this country. One which was rejiggered by the Reagan administration and Robert Bork in that administration, where monopolies became a problem only if they didn't provide cheaper prices, sort of neglecting the implications of what a Facebook could do with the massive amount of data that it collects. Some people say that it's actually more powerful. It has the analytical skills, has the capacity for signet intelligence that might rival the NSA, but certainly bigger than like a European country. Facebook in and of itself, it's like another government. Or Google, that has the ability to leverage across different industries in affecting competition and affecting our democracy. It's an interesting phenomenon that I just wanted you to speak on, and I would encourage people to go read the piece and see in their daily lives if they can see an awareness. Obviously, it would be implicit, but an awareness that they see projected in culture of the problem of having these entities that become so powerful, even if they deliver lower prices at certain times or a certain amount of convenience, because that usually ends up being short-lived anyways. But beyond that, the way that it inhibits our democracy and competition more broadly.